This is Phantology.
You may have heard of us.
All right, what's up, Gildan Guard? This is Steven, your host from Phantology, along with my lifelong friends Ryan and Josh, here to talk about The Emperor of Thorns by Mark Lawrence, the exciting conclusion to the Broken Empire Trilogy, a series that we started kind of late fall last year, and we reviewed the first two books, Prince and King of Thorns, and then I have to apologize, I got kind of waylaid with some other commitments, and it's taken me a little bit to finish off the series, but now I have, and we are excited to record our thoughts on the Emperor and I guess like the trilogy as a whole, right?
Yeah, you made it, Steven.
That was never in doubt. I was always enjoying it. Life happens, right?
Yeah. Would you say that having finished it, you wished you would have finished it earlier?
Yeah, I mean, mostly just because I feel like I would have remembered maybe some things from previous books before. Like, I always feel like that. Right now, I'm getting back into Malazan, Book of the Fallen, after spending a while not reading it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened in this series? That's like a little bit different, because that series is crazy. Mm-hmm. But I really enjoyed the last. I probably read Emperor of Thorns in like 2 or 3 days after getting back into it. So it's a pretty quick read, and I liked it quite a bit.
Yeah, I think it's pretty similar to the other two, where it's, things are always happening. It's going to be fast-paced, and it's hard to put down, at least it was for me.
Yeah, fully agreed with that. That's why I was surprised, that it took you so long to finish it, because I was very compelled to keep reading right after I finished King of Thorns, and then I just kind of burnt through Emperor of Thorns. These aren't super long books.
Mm-hmm. They are heavier books, and I think that's something we'll obviously talk about. Takes, maybe a little bit more investment, emotionally, morally, we'll say, to get through these ones.
That's a very good point.
And so I was looking through, kind of perusing some different reviews and things after finishing, trying to get a sense. I like to get a sense for what others are saying out there, because there's a lot of people that are smarter than I am writing about fantasy books, and it just kind of helps me like settle some of my thoughts. And there was one really good one, really well-written one, that basically said this is different than your usual fantasy series because it's almost like the events of the plot don't matter, and the plot just like serves as a vehicle to move the themes that Mark Lawrence is trying to get across, which I thought was pretty interesting. And a lot of these themes are this like moral ambiguity of the whole story. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Like, I think the plot is interesting for sure, but I kind of think this review had a good point, because at the end of the day, it's more of the themes and somewhat of like the resolution, but a lot of the things, like the plot events that happen throughout the middle of the book, are forgettable or just like not important. Like they're not the focus of the story.
Yeah, I don't think that's wrong, but I don't think that this is like the prime example of a book doing that. I think, for example, we just read the books of Babel, and I think that those books are much more so that the plot is not the focus. Like, I'd say the plot is more of a focus in the Broken Empire series than the books of Babel. I don't think that that's wrong, but I think out of series that do that, this isn't like one of them that really doesn't have a plot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know necessarily if I would agree with that. It's hard because I want to know more of the themes which that person put forth that they felt that it was moving, that this plot is mainly moving forward. Or, I mean, the plot is just a vehicle to put forth these themes. I mean, thinking back over the grand scheme of the Broken Empire as a trilogy, I can't really put my finger on like one main theme that I felt that Mark Lawrence was was strongly trying to put forth. I don't know. What do you guys think?
So we're going to do spoilers for the book. So if you haven't read the book yet, we're now going to be talking about the detailed events of the story. And okay, Josh, go ahead. What do you think?
Well, like you said, I think a main one is obviously how much can we judge people for the evil that they do. Like that's maybe not a one-word theme, but I think that that's the main theme in my reading of it is Jorg does a lot of evil things. He's also had a lot of evil things done to him. He's also doing these evil things overall for like a somewhat noble purpose. You know, like he honestly believes that he needs to unify the lands and become emperor, and that is going to be for the good of like the whole world. And it is. It does end up being that.
Does he really think that though? I mean, I feel like in the second book he thinks pretty clearly about how the Prince of Thorns, at least the older brother, I'm blanking on his name.
Or the Prince of Arrow.
Oh yeah,
you mean?
sorry, he is of course the Prince of Arrow. I feel like Jorg thinks like, wow, this guy is like he really wants what's best for people, and Jorg is almost spitefully going to try and take the throne from him.
Well, I think we had this debate in the second book is if he, because we came away assuming that he knew that the usurpation that
Sure.
that he knew that had happened, and I got input. I don't know if it was when we were talking, but or somebody on Discord that he would have stepped aside for the other King of Arrow.
Yeah.
Was that us talking? Like I think that was left ambiguous.
That sounds familiar. I think by the end of the book he had enough character growth that he would have done it if it was the good brother. I think not Egan is Egan of Arrow the brother who takes over at the end. I think
It's Egan and what was the other one was Orin. I think Orin.
Yeah,
is the,
Orin is the righteous one, and Egan.
Orin's the good one. Egan is the crazy one.
Yeah. So if it had been Orin of Arrow who was coming, Jorg would have stepped aside and let him, and maybe that says something about the character growth of Jorg. And so yeah, maybe in this he does have a genuine belief, because at this point he has more kingdoms than anybody else does, right? And more votes at this what's it called?
At the congressional. Yeah. I don't know though, because in Emperor, we learned that basically Jorg knows that he's the only one that really understands what's going on with the builders, and Fexler gives him this information as he's traveling around the Followed area in Spain and then down in Africa. Like he's the only one who understands what's really going on here, what the real stakes at play are. So, do you think that he would just let Orin of Arrow just kind of continue on with the same old
most
thing?
of that happens after the ending of book 2.
No, but it was 5 years ago. Is that after?
Yeah, it picks up after. Yeah, 5 years ago picks up pretty soon after the events of book 2.
I'm not sure about that.
Okay, I read several.
I
read several summaries, and they all said that. So
how could that be though? Because he's learning stuff about the Prince of Arrow, and like the builders say that they're going to back the Prince of Arrow, but Jorg would have already have taken care of the Prince of Arrow.
Okay, I could be wrong, but that's
the current, like the present timeline of this book is definitely what, like 2-3 years after the end of King. But I think the 5 years, because the 5 years ago picks up from the plot line, because King also does the same thing, right? Because he gets the gun from Fexler. He gets the gun from Fexler in the 5 years ago time. He gets him out of stasis, and he grabs the gun, and then he uses the gun to kill Prince of Arrow. I'm not with you here, Josh.
okay.
I think we should trust Steven on this one, being the one who's read the most. It makes sense, though. I do remember in his flashbacks in this series, when he goes to meet with the mathematicians, that they're talking about how most of the formulas show that Orin of Arrow will take over, right?
Yeah, this does say in the it's after Prince of Thorns, but before King of Thorns. You're right.
Aha! Yeah. All right.
My bad.
Point for me. Yeah. Where were we? Like, what was the discussion line?
Well, if he would have let Orin take the throne. This is a pretty big tangent to a tangent. So,
right.
I still think when we were talking about themes, I still think overall a theme of the book is are evil actions justified if they're for the good of what's the philosophical argument?
Like the greater good.
Yeah,
like justify argument. The means.
Yeah, like so there's that, and then there's the can Jorg grow enough to be able to do what he needs to do from how he was broken as a child, and we get a lot more insight into that. It just seems like however bad you think Jorg has had it, he's like actually had it worse. He's had like pretty much every sort of trauma that can be inflicted on someone. And so there's that theme too of like of that trauma impacting him.
And then I would add also, by the end, you're wondering, is Jorg redeemed? Like, does the resolution of this thing put Jorg at a place where he's been forgiven, redeemed, absolved, whatever, from all the evil that he's done?
Or does he need that absolution? Does that need to be given to him? Or does he just, is what he does, are his actions, enough that he doesn't need somebody else to absolve him, but he just can absolve himself? Because he does do things that he really struggles with, even if he, like, when he killed the his oh dang, what's the baby's name?
His brother, Will.
When he kills the stepbrother, Deegan.
Oh, Deegan. Oh yeah. No, William's the other brother.
When he kills Deegan, like, that breaks him, right? So like, there are some things that he doesn't really think he can be redeemed for, and he has to struggle through that.
I think it's different than a lot of other fantasy books where, like, you can read it pretty deeply and really consider these types of things, and there's a subtext to most of the series where, like, this is being explored, whereas your typical epic fantasy has a lot of themes and cool ideas and stuff, but there's not this, like, running philosophical commentary throughout.
Maybe one of and this is probably totally my thought, not intended at all by the author at all, but maybe the broken empire needs somebody just as broken in order to make it whole again. Maybe Orin of Arrow, although he could have probably unified the different empires, I don't know that he could have neutralized the threat of the builders' machines or the artificial intelligences, because he just didn't have the same experiences that Jorg did.
Yeah, he didn't have the ruthlessness or know-how or just, like, I don't know what the word is, but he was not uniquely positioned in the same way that Jorg was by nature of his life experiences and birth and having to go through all the crap that Jorg went through and put others through to be able to even have a chance to do that. And
he wasn't, it seemed, as capable at throwing off the kind of the machinations of those people behind the scenes, like Sageus, and because Sageus tried to control Orin, and ultimately he wasn't able to, but then he was able to take Egan and kind of topple Orin and take over that way. And Sageus tried to control Jorg in a few different ways, and Jorg was always never having it. And if Jorg hadn't have given in to if he had given into Sages, we would have just been right back to just warring, kingdoms warring against each other. Empire never would have been unified. It probably would have, everybody would have been nuked by the artificial intelligences. So I don't know that in my mind Jorg was redeemed. I think that he is a mixed bag. He did a lot of awful, atrocious things that it's very difficult to redeem from, and I think that his fate at the end of this book is the only way that this trilogy should have ended.
Josh, I remember when you finished, I think either you or Ben said this, one of you called the other one right away and wanted to talk through the ending, right? And I'm sorry for the subtle twinism there, but what conversations were you guys having right at the end?
A lot of it focused around just if it was cathartic or not. I think, was this the ending, like Ryan said, that Jorg needed? Was it the ending that the world needed? And just like kind of the meta-ness around it, like we were kind of talking through, what exactly does the wheel represent? What and what implications does it have for the world moving forward? So it was mostly centered around that kind of stuff. And with I can't remember if Ben knew, like, if he got the foreshadowing or not with Will being the dead king. I mean, so there was that, and that was, I think that we can talk more about that reveal, but I think it was well done and well foreshadowed and not super shocking, but a very kind of Sanderson-esque reveal that recontextualized a lot of the story.
Yeah, I know that.
Do you want to talk about that now, or should we talk about the wheel and the meta-ness of the ending?
I want to talk about the dead king being William, because on my first read through, I did not expect it at all, and so obviously this most recent read through was my second one, and I saw it coming a mile away. But Stephen, you commented on our Discord that you predicted this, and you thought it was pretty obvious that this was foreshadowed, which wasn't my experience at all. I mean, I could see how obvious it was reading it the second time, but it caught me by surprise. Mm-hmm.
I think that means it's done pretty well. Like, you can't expect an author to write a book that's going to catch every person by surprise in, an awesome way. Like, I think in Sanderson's lectures, he talks about this. He tries to get, like, I'm probably going to butcher these numbers, but he tries to make his reveals to the point where, like, for 70% of people, it's, like, right before and it's awesome. And then for, like, 15%, it's way before and they predict it. And for 15%, they just, like, still don't understand what happened or something, Like, you have to kind of, like, just play to the averages when trying to do these things, because your audience is going to be pretty wide range. Some will be distracted when they're reading, some are going to miss details here and there. So I mean, if our general experience is like some of us are catching it, some of us aren't, we're all enjoying it, I think it's done pretty well.
I mean, I think I was in that solid camp of, like, I think when he was walking into the hall, like, that's when I was kind of putting the pieces together, like before I think the actual official reveal had happened, it clicked for me. And so, I think when that's happening, when you're getting the clues going right before the reveal, and that's when most people figure it out, I think that's a really well done, reveal.
I do have to say, usually I am not the person from Phantology to be picking into cluing into these reveals before they're happening. So I was kind of surprised. Like, I figure if I thought something was obvious, then, like, everyone else would have as well, because for whatever reason I just don't usually pick up on these things as I'm reading books. I'm, like, way too immersed. But as soon as Chella showed up, and as soon as Chella realized who the Dead King was, I also did, because she says a couple things like, "Oh, the Dead King is younger than you," to Jorg, and then
I think that's when it hit me too. I think that's
that's
was that earlier
that's well
in the book?
before he walks
Maybe
in.
Not.
Then Yeah.
Okay, sorry, it's been a while. Yeah, there was one comment I
Okay.
think by Chella that like was, oh, that's who it is,
Yeah. And they talked several times about how William's will was so strong, and I was thinking the whole time, like, why do we care how strong this kid's will, how strong Will's will is? Because he's dead, and it's like not really important anymore. And then once it started to be like hinted that there was a connection, and then they were trying to raid his grave at one point, and I actually am not sure exactly why that was happening. I hadn't really thought back to that moment until just now.
Did they want to recover
But
his
I
body?
thought there were a lot of clues. I don't remember. Did they? But that's why Cello was like preparing Kai's body to be used. But yeah, a little fuzzy on that one.
I guess we don't know
Anyway,
all the details.
I thought it could have been more subtle. I would have been fine with it being more subtle, but it was also good the way it was. I will say in general though, Will being the Dead King, like, I don't know if I buy it. Like, this kid is really that special, and he died in such a unique circumstance that he's going to be taking over all of the
Well,
powers of the
it's
dead.
it's a good foil to Jorg. I mean, Jorg does the same thing in the Land of the Living, and
yeah.
I mean, I think that's what the symbolism is, right? We see Jorg's whole journey through the Land of the Living, uniting the whole empire and getting everyone together, and Will does that in the Land of the Dead.
Maybe the problem is I just don't understand enough about how the magic works to think that a little kid that's just recently died could become in charge of this, like the Land of the Living is something that I have more familiarity with. I have no experience with how the Land of the Dead works, so that seems weird to me.
It seems less likely that a 12-year-old kid is going to unify a whole empire in the Land of the Living than whatever's.
Yeah,
it seems like age is. It seems like age is more important when you're living than when you're dead.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
If you want to learn more about the magic system, then you should read the Wheel of Oshheim trilogy.
Okay. That's the Red. So, is that the name of the trilogy? Because I've also heard of it referred to as Red Queen's War.
I think that's probably the correct term. I think it's the third book that's called The Wheel of Oshheim. Okay. So I think the Red Queen's War is probably the
Prince
proper.
of Fools or something of Fools and Liar's Key. That's the book you're talking about. The next companion trilogy.
And those are the only ones that. It's interesting because it's kind of set at a simultaneous time period, or there's overlapping periods of time between the two series, and the protagonist from the other one runs into Jorg at like once or twice, and so if you read it. If you read the series immediately after reading The Broken Empire, which is what I did, you'll kind of get some of those and be able to connect the dots a little bit more. But I mean, it's more like Easter eggs in video games or movies. It's not really super critical.
We were talking about extended universes a little bit on the Discord. I don't remember if you weighed in or not, Ryan, but since you've read both, is it kind of similar to the Robin Hobb extended universe, where you have the Fitz books that just kind of follow each other, and then there's the Life Shift Traders, and also the Dragon books. I don't remember the name of those 4 books. Anyway, they have some connection to each other, some plot important things, but they're mostly standalone. Is it similar in that way, would you say?
I would say it's definitely similar to that.
And less of a connection than like the Cosmere, for example. Well,
no.
Initially, the Cosmere is not super connected, but it's starting to get more.
I would say it's probably closer to more current Cosmere books. I guess because they do talk about the Dead King and characters from this series and the events that happen, and when Jorg sets off that nuke. That factors in, and so it's like these events are taking place in both stories.
When he sets off the nuke in the desert?
No,
Or at
the
the city?
nuke that
Or-
leveled that city.
Galeth?
Yeah, Galeth. I guess, I mean, it wasn't really the nuke, it was just like the triggering mechanism or whatever, but...
Yeah. Okay. And the Red Queen, she was the Red Queen from the name of the trilogy is also the Red Queen that was there at Congression at the end.
Yes.
That was the...
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I figured
And
as
you,
much.
you met the Red Queen's sister as well. She's kind of a player in the
Okay.
other trilogy.
Okay, maybe we shouldn't say too much
I mean,
more.
you meet them both at the very beginning of the first... So I'm just saying they factor into the plot. But yeah, I guess I'll
Okay.
leave it at that.
Okay. Okay. I know, Josh, you just started Book of the Ancestor, and I've been meaning to start that one as well. But I can't until I finish Memories of Ice. Brian.
Good dedication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, at this point,
Not
you're
gonna be-
getting... Jake's catching up and passing you.
That's why I'm so motivated to continue reading.
And if you ever need Steven to be motivated, just pit him against Jake and something, and off he goes.
Yeah, I don't know, I get kind of competitive. Just give me a rival and I'll go Jorg on them.
For the record, I really like Book of the Ancestor. I'm about 3/4 of the way through the second one, so enjoying it.
Nice, yeah. I think I could see us reading a lot of Mark Lawrence. So if you're a fan of Mark Lawrence and you happen to have found this review, then tune in to join Discord. Maybe I'll make a Discord channel just for Mark Lawrence verse, because seems like they're all interconnected. We may need a place to discuss all these books. So anyway, hop on our Discord and let us know what we are way wrong on, or what thoughts.
I
we
mean,
might
I've already
be
been way wrong on
right
something if we didn't cut that out, so...
No, that's staying.
No,
We're
That's for
leaving
sure
that in. They
staying.
need to know we're mortal, that we make mistakes, right? Because that never happens.
All right, so should we just kind of like go back through some of the plot points here and talk through the book? So, towards the beginning, one of the really like the first big thing that happened is the attempted assassination of Miana by the agent of the Pope, and Jorg is like dream walking along with them. And I thought this was an exciting way to start the book, although I was a bit disappointed that the whole plot line with the Pope, like, I guess that's a plot that I would point to and be like, you know, what was really this one didn't seem to have much importance on the final outcome of
Really?
anything.
I mean, the Pope tried to kill Jorg's wife and unborn child. Don't you think that played a part in Jorg ultimately killing the Pope?
Yeah, but what was the point? Like, I didn't see the importance of Jorg killing the Pope, I guess.
I mean, it was just another... I think it shows Jorg's ruthlessness, right? He's maybe redeemed in some aspects and learning and growing as a character, but in other aspects, it's like he is still the same ruthless Jorg who's doing whatever it takes. Like, you see it when the Gildan Guard aren't doing what he's asking, and so he's like, boom, I'm gonna kill that captain, and then the next one's like, what? Like, wait, and then doesn't he kill the next guy
he kills
in
like 3
command?
or 4 people or something.
And so he's just killing people to get his way, and I mean, and then again, so he kills the Pope, and then later on at Congression, he's just killing people who aren't voting his way. That's something that Orin of Arrow never could do, and that's Jorg's way of unifying the broken empire.
Just kill everyone that doesn't agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you. It definitely serves to give Jorg some motivation and cement who his character is. But I think I already know that about Jorg. And at this point, like in the latter stages of the book, I really just cared about what's going to happen at Congression and how do we resolve the conflict with the Builders and with the Dead King and the zombies that are coming to kill everyone. Like, those are things I care about. And then there's still this like lingering side thing with the church, and I don't really care about that. Like, that didn't seem to really factor into the final thing. An example of a good way that this all tied together was the whole like 5 years previous plot, where I was wondering the whole time, okay, how is this 5 years previous plot going to impact the final thing? And then it does, because during Congression, he's gathering the support of these people that you've seen him talk with and do diplomacy, and then obviously the Builders plot. Like, that all tied together really well. I did not see the Church Pope plot line tie into the final thing.
I mean, other than giving Jorg that external motivation, I'm not sure. I can't remember any other main way that might fit in.
Yeah, some good, some bad for me. I guess my point is that not every plot point really seemed like a earth-shattering thing. A lot of it was just to kind of like I felt like a lot of the plot was a vehicle for the themes. I kind of agreed with that review that I referenced at the beginning. Okay, the 5 years earlier plot, was there anything there that really jumped out at you guys other than the slow revelations into what was going on with the Builders? And because I thought that was interesting, and that was like the majority of why we were interested in that.
Yeah, that was always hard for me not to have that be too meta or nebulous. Like the what's his name? Felix?
Fexler?
Fexler. Yeah, I always like read it as Felix, but Flexler?
Yeah, Flexler.
Yeah.
Or was it
Fexler?
Fexler.
One L. Okay.
Yes. Anyway, like I enjoyed him as a character, but I don't know if he was like the best character to get super involved, not involved, but interested or engaged in that storyline. So I kind of struggled with it.
Because he was basically a no one. He was like he was the third string builder and didn't really know anything too important.
Yeah, and just his overall personality, I guess, wasn't super engaging to me.
I thought he had an interesting his story was interesting. I mean, I don't know, because he kind of furthers the story of the Builders, right? That's how Jorg ends up getting a lot of his intel on what's going on, is by talking with Fexler and figuring out Fexler's story, and I think he learns about the technology that then prepares him a little bit more at Congression.
Yeah, but I felt like that's the thing. I felt like that was his only purpose, was just to be that conduit to help us get that information. Whereas, like, if I would have been super engaged with wanting to get the backstory on this character, then maybe that information could have been a little bit more engaging and presented a little bit more well. This is like not a huge knock on the series. Like overall, it doesn't really factor in, but it's something that could have been polished up in my mind.
So you didn't like the story in and of itself?
Yeah, and mostly because it was coming to me through a character I didn't care about.
I think it's a bit of a knock on the series, though, Josh, because this is a recurring thing where a lot of the minor characters, we never really just like sit with a given outside of a few characters. Your average minor character has like one or two details about them revealed. They may be like one or two personality traits, but they're not like super real deep people that we never really like get behind that much.
Yeah.
It's mostly a Jorg-centric story, which is fine. Like, that is definitely the point of the series. But I think for me, I do prefer a little bit more slow burn in my epic fantasy. And so I would have been fine if each of these books was 200 pages long and those 200 pages were filled with just, like, fleshing out some more characters or a little bit more of the world or something. So I had like some more stakes or more rooting interests other than just interested to see what happens with Jorg.
Yeah, fair.
I didn't really feel that way for this series. I can definitely see why it benefits the development of other series, but I thought I liked the pace of this story, and I liked that Jorg was the focus. But I do recognize that Jorg is a very, very off-putting person. I mean, that's putting it nicely, right? He's just like downright evil.
It is.
At some point.
Off-putting, yeah.
So I think that maybe for some readers it might benefit if they have the perspective of somebody who you can who you can empathize with more, maybe.
Fair. Man, if I ever hear you call somebody off-putting, Ryan, I'm just going to be like, dang, Ryan hates that person.
Yeah.
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 Ryan would not trust his family around that. Just keep him far away from Ryan.
Scum of the earth
Yeah.
right there. We do get perspective from Chella, but she's also pretty off-putting
Yeah.
herself.
Yeah.
That was so. I liked the 5 years earlier thing. I thought that really worked and helped. I think that helped the pacing quite a bit to just have it broken up like that. The Chella perspective chapters, they didn't do much for me. I was not a fan of those of that decision.
I think that, Chella is the romance that Jorg probably deserves.
That's true. He does not deserve Catherine and does not deserve, oh boy,
Definitely
Miana?
doesn't deserve
Miana.
Miana.
Yeah, definitely doesn't deserve Miana. Catherine is a little, she has her own crazy side, but yeah, he deserves Chella.
Well, Chella's who he gets.
Yeah.
So I guess that's some poetic justice right there. Although them getting together in the carriage seemed so... I guess there was some sexual tension before. It
was kind of
didn't
out of place.
It was not supposed to sit well with you.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. I don't think you're supposed to like it.
I
This
mean, doesn't that also show who Jorg is as a person? That he's willing to sleep with this dead lady who's come back from the dead, and also while he has a pregnant wife and and Catherine, who he has who knows what type of relationship with.
I mean, was he just getting with Chella because of frustrations over not being able to get with
Oh, yeah.
Catherine?
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I picture Chella as Bellatrix Lestrange. Like, yeah.
Okay.
Just, that's who I picture as the character. Is Helena Bonham Carter, is that her name? Close enough. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, Helena
Yeah,
Bonham Carter.
as like that character, but like in the Bellatrix, get up and everything. So yeah, I guess that would be like if Bellatrix were to like have a scene with like Fenrir Greyback where they just suddenly, copulate. You'd be like, well, I guess they deserve each other, but
So there's a lot of Harry Potter fan fiction that's come up over the years, but Josh has just proposed something that has never before seen
oh, I
the
don't
light
know,
of day.
Stephen. I do not know. I'm sure that's out there
We
somewhere.
could hope it's never seen the light of day.
If it's not, somebody should write it.
Josh
Oh,
is
boy, okay.
he's an author, and his pseudonym he writes some Harry Potter fan fiction.
Of a very specific nature.
Yeah.
Yep.
Speaking of Catherine, I was a little unsatisfied with, I don't know, like, Catherine seemed, in the second book, it seemed like Catherine was going to be such a big thing, like this weird connection between Jorg and Catherine was going to be so important eventually, and I kept on thinking it was, but that, I don't know, like, it seemed like maybe that should have been the impetus in one of them dying, or one of them doing something that caused big things, or I don't know, like Miana was gonna, I think she did kind of like already know that there was something weird going on there, but it never really, like, I never really saw a big consequence from this.
Yeah. It was like, okay, well, there could be a love triangle. How about we have there be a love triangle? That's...
Yeah, that's kind of how I
Yeah.
felt.
I mean, it did seem like most of the more major consequences with Catherine were in the second book with Sages and all of that.
Yeah, it really worked. I think it really worked for the second book, but then I guess I was hoping for a more culminating event here of this relationship, and it just kind of fizzled.
Yeah, I mean that is true.
It helped.
I was hoping that things would there would be another trilogy that kind of more directly follows up, because they set it up a little bit with Jorg being turned into an AI and his son being there, and then they're all kind of living in like a similar, like in the same castle, and so it seemed like he set things up that there could be a direct follow-up later on. I don't know if he said anything about it. I mean, he certainly seems to be working on, like he's moved on from that. Like he's working on a lot of different characters and different worlds. And so I don't know if he said that he's ever going to come back to this or not.
At the very end, is baby William, is he the Emperor? Is that the case?
I think he's set up to be the Emperor. I don't know if he's like, his mom is, regent in his place until he comes of age or whatever. My impression was that he was Emperor or would be in the future.
Okay, I'm looking back. Jorg Ghost refers to his son Will and says, like, yes, my Emperor. That could be... that could just be, like, playful. That could be the reality. I'm not... Maybe there's more. So, anyway, let us know in the comments if that's true. But don't give us spoilers for future series. Please keep it to Broken Empire. What do you think about Jorg as a father? Because I guess one thing about Catherine that is good is it helps to characterize Jorg in a little bit different light, where you can see like he doesn't disregard every other person, but he just has these like obsessions for people, for Catherine specifically. But then he decides he wants to try to be a father, like he wants to try to love his son, which is something that he never got from his father. And I think this is kind of towards the end where you start to wonder, like, okay, are we gonna redeem Jorg? Like, is Jorg he does a big sacrifice, and a lot of it is by motivation for his son. So do you think that the Jorg as a father helps to redeem what we've seen so far?
I mean, it gave him something to die for. I think that was maybe the most important part, is that Jorg has been motivated pretty much only by selfish reasons up to this point, or trying to seek the approval of his father, and then trying to spite other people, trying to show them that he could succeed where everybody else said he would fail. And at this point, he's finally thinking about something other than himself, and I guess maybe gives him the strength to die. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe his learning that his little brother William was the dead king also help him try and right that wrong, and help his little brother move on as well.
That was good, especially at the end when you see that connection in him and his brother, and the guilt that he's carried around. However, I don't understand why. Like, we're not supposed to think as a reader that he actually did something wrong by letting his brother die, right? Like, there was nothing he could have done as a kid. He was trapped in the Thorns, but he blames himself, right? Is that the interpretation you guys had?
Yeah, I don't think there's any way he could have done anything, but I think it's meant to show, even if something seems so close but it's just out of reach, you're always going to torment yourself. Even if there's not really anything you could have done, it can still become a torment in your life.
And especially being such a young age as Jorg was, is there any way for a child of that age to process events that are that horrible in a way that makes sense?
Yeah.
Probably not. And I mean, it's just another thing that messed up Jorg, showed him a disgusting view of the world that he's clung to ever since.
Yeah. Like maybe if you look back and you're like, well, maybe I wasn't really that entangled or that torn up. Maybe if I would have just been able to get through the pain a little bit more, I could have gotten free and say, like
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
like it's hard to, when you're looking back when you're a kid, like something that seems like you're in a lot of pain. Well, maybe it wasn't that much pain. It was just your kid mind, going worst case scenario type thing.
Yeah, Jorg definitely needs a therapist. I feel bad for that therapist, but I think that the place that they should start is here. They should start at this event, try to unpack this a little bit, try to separate reality.
I don't know. I mean,
what Jorg is remembering.
He was also forced to kill his family dog. That seems like you might need to unpack that too.
Was that before or after this?
There's a lot. There's a lot to it. It would take several sessions.
Yeah.
Well, that would have been
and probably some
before, right? Because
yeah.
I mean, his dad was.
Yeah, there's stuff.
Yeah, his dad. How did you guys feel about? Jorg never really getting like a good scene in with his father at the end. It was like
I loved it.
He just learns your dad died while he was sleeping with his stepmom.
Yeah, I loved it personally. I thought it was great. I thought that it was like that. I don't know. I thought it was poetic, and I thought that it it forced George to get closer outside of just killing, either deciding to or not to kill his dad. Like that's always the cliche is like, okay, is he going to get closure from killing him, or is he going to get closure from not killing him? But instead this time it was kind of a, like, oh nope, you don't even get the chance.
Yeah, there's very few
I thought
tropes.
it was good in that way. I just thought it was confusing because we never really got a. I guess we're just supposed to accept what was told to us, which is that he died, kind of right like in the night, or with his stepmother, or was he killed in fighting the Dead King? Like we don't get to see it. It's not on camera. I struggle with off camera deaths.
Yeah,
Maybe
Steven's like
from with this.
Steven says if it happens off camera, then they're not really dead.
That's right. This violates my rule of reading fantasy books.
Maybe a more direct follow up would resolve that.
Steven wants to be in the moment, in the throes of passion, when
that's a scene.
when his heart gives out.
I think
that's what Steven's calling for.
It is a bit ironic that Jorg never got the chance to face one of the main villains in his life, and possibly, if Jorg's dad had been a better father, maybe he could have helped Jorg process those events in some way that he could have become a rational, functioning human being, or at least half as evil as Jorg is. That might be a benefit for the world. Who knows?
All right, we are offering our therapy services to Jorg of Ancrath. I really hope he doesn't take us up on it.
I don't want to have to unpack any of that. And Jorg seems like the worst type of patient to have as a therapist.
Yeah, he's either going to manipulate the heck out of you or kill you or both, and it's there's no way it's worth it. There's no amount of money that would make that worth it. Yeah. Okay, I think that's our review. Let's do you guys have worst of the best? We have not done worst of the best for a while, because recent reviews that I've been on have been about the Wheel of Time TV show or the Wheel of Time books or stuff with all of us together. We haven't actually just reviewed a book for a while. So if you don't remember, what we're doing here is talking about the one scene in another, like, it could be about a character, it could be about a plot point, it could be about a theme. Just like the one thing that just kind of rubbed you the wrong way, or could have been a little bit better. And it's always tricky after talking through everything, because we've already done a lot of like nitpicks here and there. But after this long-winded explanation, which is designed to give you guys more time to think of examples, who's ready?
I think that the whole scene of him going down to Africa or Afrique that whole thing is kind of the worst of the best. I can't remember specific examples, but I feel like it expanded the world in some really cool ways and let us see some new cultures and stuff. And I always generally eat that up, but it just seemed to like happen too quickly and be over too fast, and you don't really know how important it was, or if it, so that was my worst of the best.
I liked the trick that he played on Michael, the Builder Ghost, by dropping off his nuke or triggering device or whatever that thing was. That was
cool.
Classic Jorg move. Yeah. Ryan, do you have...
I actually cannot think of anything, honestly. It was all perfect. No, it wasn't.
It's leaving.
It wasn't perfect, but no, I can't contribute to worst of the best this week. I'm sorry.
All right, I will. I'll attempt to go. I'll say my worst of the best is going to be two scenes, which just kind of both do the same thing for us. One was the burning down the monastery, abbot, or whatever place that was, cathedral. That was it was some kind of church building where basically the clergy comes in and they're very corrupt and they kidnap and rape Jorg, and as a kid. And then the other scene where Jorg is captured in the fallout zone of Spain and is about to be tortured and eventually kind of gets out of that. Two very dark scenes, and they're in there for a reason, to really kind of like cement these ideas home that, like Jorg is a terrible person that's had bad things done to him, etc., etc. I just don't know, like, how many more times do we need to see this in this series to get the idea? Like, at this point in the books, do we need to see this more? Like, more flashbacks? I don't know that it actually, like, added anything more to Jorg's character. We certainly know. We know it for sure. And I don't think it's necessarily, like, a make or break. I'm probably being kind of critical here, but I feel like I already knew. And seeing these things didn't necessarily add anything to it.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think that's accurate.
All right, so our first Mark Lawrence trilogy is down, for me, at least. Ryan, how many of his trilogies have you read?
Just two. Just the Broken Empire and the Red Queen's War. Those are the only two. I want to explore his world more, or his universe. I guess it's not the others. The others aren't set in the same world, but I've got some other books I need to read first.
Yeah, we all kind of talked about our book planning, our book reading plans for the year of 2022. And they are ambitious, so we don't want to try to guilt each other into reading everything that all the other people are reading. Otherwise, we're just going to look back at the year in shame for not reading hundreds of books. But Josh, you're going to continue with Book of the Ancestor, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's your
Oh, yeah. I should be done with that by ending of January, mid-February, probably.
Nice. Okay. So you can follow Josh if you're wanting to get more Mark Lawrence right away, and then eventually the rest of the channel will catch up with all of his stuff. That's the plan.
Nice.
Should we do a rating?
All right. Okay, thanks, guys.
Rating out of 10 for the whole
rating?
series?
Oh, yeah, we should.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Let's do a rating. Okay, for book or whole series or both?
Let's do series because this is kind of the end of the
Ryan, what's
series.
yours?
I'm gonna go with an 8.5 out of 10. I think that if you can tolerate Jorg, who is a reprehensible human being, I think that you will enjoy the story that Mark Lawrence tells. And it's dark. There is quite a bit of death, but it doesn't fall into really any typical fantasy tropes. It's a different type of fantasy story, and I think it deserves to be read once again if you can tolerate it. And I've read it twice, and I've enjoyed it both times.
Nice.
Josh?
So I think when I just finished it, I think I gave it an 8. But I think I'm going to lower it to 7.5 just because I haven't thought about it all that much in the months since I've read it. I mean, it has stuck with me and I've enjoyed this conversation, but it's not something I come back to of being oh dang, I love that scene. Oh man, I remember how much that shocked me. Or, oh man, this really messed me up. With again, just comparing it, I know I already did this once, but comparing it to books of Babel, I'm pretty consistent in going back and thinking about some of those books and those scenes and those characters. And I'm just really not with this series. So, 7.5, yeah.
I'll split the difference. I'll say 8. I think it's good because it's different, and because if you're a deep thinker, you can really kind of think about some of these themes. But it could be better. My personal preference would be it could be better if it was longer, if we had more time to focus on other characters, if we had just more slow burn in the world. But on the other hand, would that ruin what Lawrence is trying to go for, because it is all focused on Jorg and the themes there? So maybe it shouldn't be, maybe it doesn't work that way, the way that I want it to. And I think maybe it just comes down to a preference thing. So I do think this is a series that it's got to suit your preference. And I think pretty quickly, like Ryan said, if you can stomach it, then you'll probably like it.
Nice.
All right. That good, Ryan? That a wrap?
I think that's a wrap.
Okay. See you guys later.
See you, Steven. See you, Ryan.
Have a good one.